The Red Sox. They are not bad, not very good. We've talked about a lot of things: the bullpen, the lineup, all sorts of stuff. The starting pitching, though, is kind of the stuff that raised my eyes the last couple days. Um, they took a lot of flyers this offseason on some pitchers, but it seems like now they're in kind of an odd place where uh, guys who are throwing strikes can't miss bats. Guys who can miss bats aren't throwing strikes. And as a result, when they don't score runs, they're not really having a lot of success, especially coming off this series against Toronto. Uh, Given how the rotation was constructed coming into this year, um, is this you know is this something early in the season that you expected to have some bumps and hiccups as they kind of figured out who their actual 5 man reliable rotation was, you guys?
Yeah, I mean they're running out uh Dick Fitz, Sean Newcomb, and Hunter Dobbins. Like that's that's not a big league rotation yet, and that's not even meant to be disparaging toward those guys. It's just that those are swing guys at this point, and like ideally you're not getting into your swing guys until Memorial Day or once it's I mean it's 40 degrees outside, so the fact that you're using those guys already is less than ideal. So like that's not it's just like conceptually this just isn't what they are supposed to be, and I think we all kind of knew that. But the problem is that um, Bayo and Giolito specifically got hurt, and now it's you kind of waiting on those guys. Once those guys get back, I think it's a slightly different discussion, or it's at least worth revisiting because I don't think this is a fully this is their prime form, their full form. So that's I think that's an important consideration. I would also, as a former pitcher myself, place a lot of blame on the offense at this point, considering they haven't scored any runs for large stretches of this small season thus far. So that being like going back to what I was just saying to kind of contradict myself, like Fitz has been fine. Like Fitz has been fine. Dobbins was good. Newcomb, meh. So like, but like when you get that collection of performance from guys like that, you would like to think that your offense for which you're spending $70 million between two guys, let alone the rest of your lineup, would maybe pick you up. And that hasn't been the case. So all of a sudden, it's like, we got to talk about the pitching. Well, it's like, well, maybe if your offense could do something, the pitching wouldn't be as big of a deal. The issue, if you like the actual thing to, I don't want to get, I don't like, nobody should be concerned about anything on April, whatever. But like, how can Bueller have been bad? And that's the concern. And like Hauk specifically is the one that concerns me because he was bad for most of spring training. Um,
And for a lot of
Bueller,
last year too,
yeah,
second
and
half. Yeah.
I like him. I Hauk. I'm a Hauk guy. I'm a Haukamaniac, if you will. This the stuff is just filthy. Like he's got ridiculous shit, and I think that plays over time. Maybe he never harnesses it, but like what they're expecting of him to be basically a three, you can live with that. I think. Bueller, it's weird because like you saw it in the fall, but he had a rough year last year coming back from the injury. I've seen enough at times, and kind of he's talking. One of the guys you might have been alluding to is him because he's still throwing a ton of strikes. He's just kind of getting hit. I still think it's a small sample size. I'm not ready to press the panic button on any of this yet. Even like Crochet is like the most underwhelming start to the season, and I was just looking at it as like ERA plus is like 300. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, I guess it's a long way of saying I'm not totally surprised by any of this, but I do think it has to get better.
Bueller's the interesting one to me because he said before the season he did an interview and he was just like, I'm still learning how to pitch because for 6 years it was I could just throw it by everybody
Yeah.
and now he can't. So it's how do I how do I learn to get around people instead of throwing it by them? So I think that's gonna come. I think Andrew Bailey's a good pitching coach for him to have because he's so focused on the, off speed stuff. We don't want you throwing fastballs. I don't think he should be throwing fastballs at this point in his career because they're just not nowhere near what they were, during his prime. So I think it'll take time for him. Hauk, like you said, is he ever gonna harness it consistently? Like he will through a 4 week stretch and look like the best pitcher on the team, and then he'll go and give up 3 home runs in a game, and it's like, where's the consistency here? So for those two guys, like Mike said, not the panic button. It's something to pay attention to moving forward. And then with the rest of them, with the Dick Fitz and the rookies that are coming up and all that, like they're not going to be here in a month and a half. Maybe Dick Fitz will, but when Bayo and Giolito get back, Cutter Crawford's there. I think he's going to be interesting, whether or not you want him to start or be that long relief guy. That's a decision that's going to have to be made. But when you have 10 guys fighting for a 5-man rotation, and right now you don't really have the option of all 10, I think when you do, when everybody gets healthy, things are going to fall into place the way they should. At least you hope that, right?
Yeah, Bueller for me has been kind of put into a unfortunate position because at least my perception when they signed him was not that they were expecting him to come in and be their number 2 starter.
Right.
Because it looks like, I mean, his stuff is just not there yet. I hope it's a yet, that it's like it's not gone. It's just something he has to get back. But yeah, he was kind of the guy that you were looking at the rotations like, hey, this rotation could be okay. Crochet at the top, it could be good. And if Bueller ends up rediscovering some of his stuff, then that really puts you over the top. But because of the injuries to Bayo, Crawford, Houck obviously struggling, Bueller's ended up being under a lot more of a microscope than you probably would have liked him to have been 2 weeks into April.
Just looking at it right now, it's like he's not missing any bats.
Right.
Like his whiff rate his whiff rate was bad last year relative to the rest of his career, and it's gotten worse this year, which isn't probably not the greatest, combination for Fenway Park or the AL East. But I think you made a good point, Ben. Like he's been put in a tough spot where it's this is a guy who you're kind of hoping has like a 4.75 4.5 ERA when it's all said and done this season, and it's like we won a lot of 6-5 6-4 games with Walker Buehler, and we can live with that. And like he goes to the bullpen in the postseason if you get in, and becomes that swinging guy again where maybe the stuff plays up where he doesn't have to pace himself over 5 or 6 innings. So yeah, you're kind of jamming a square peg into a round hole with a guy like that.
The name value thing I think plays into that too, because from a fan perspective, it's like we got Walker Buehler and he's going to be our number 2, and really he should be your number 5. He should be the guy that's like, all right, we need a good night from the offense because he's still working through whatever he's working through. Like I said earlier, he's learning how to pitch right now, so putting him in a spot where people view him as that. All right, we got Crochet, we got Buehler, we got Houck. That's just not what it is. Buehler is a guy you're hoping that when you get to the end of the season, he's starting to ramp up, like and really just be the guy he was last year. That's where the value is. That's what you paid the money for, is for the postseason, and hoping that adrenaline wise, the stuff plays a little bit better, and you can use him in a bunch of different roles.
One of the guys who has benefited the most, in my opinion, from this not missing the bats is Ceddanne Rafaela. He looks great because he's got so much action, so many balls to run down. Just hit rockets to right center field, and then he can make the greatest catch of all time.
Well, that is a thing to kind of point out, though. I know you're not necessarily meaning to do this, but they've committed a bunch of errors now in the last like handful of games. And again, when it looked like it was going to be, the defense was not going to be an issue to start the season. Like it was like, oh, all right, yeah. Like Campbell, I believe in Campbell's defense, despite what some people might say. Story, I believe in his defense. Obviously, Raphael is sick. Like. In Bregman like that, so like theoretically the defense should be better again. So you're asking a lot out of your pitching staff if you can't catch the ball behind them too. So like we were under the assumption that they were going to hit and they're going to field. They haven't done either yet, and so it's like, what do you expect from the pitching staff? Like that's kind of an issue too.
If you think about what the errors were too, like do they have 3 catchers interferences early in the season? It's been like 10 games, which is
like I think
like
even
just pull the glove
that.
back, man. It's not that difficult. And Campbell moving him from second to the outfield and then back to second, he had 3 errors in 2 games. I think they pile up, and it makes it look a lot worse when you're looking at like the raw numbers throughout the season. Hopefully, when you get into May and it's not 40 degrees outside, it's a little bit easier to field the ball. I don't want to be the excuse guy for the Red Sox because they haven't earned the right to have excuses made for them, but it's freezing outside, and they handled it worse than the Blue Jays did, for sure. But I don't think they're going to be booting the ball around the way they did in this early portion of this series and next month,
One other point to kind of make, and this might be a catapult into what you want to talk about next, Ben, but like I think you saw it on Tuesday night with the Campbell play. Like, super athletic, goes into the hole. He was shaded up the middle, goes into the hole, makes a play, makes a decision he probably doesn't make 3 years from now to throw that ball. The throw was bad, wasn't terrible, but you've got Romy Gonzalez at first base, who is not necessarily a natural first baseman, and like you would like to see a guy come off the bag to make that play and limit the damage there. It's the guy's still going to get on, but maybe it saves a run or two or whatever it was. And like it's a right-handed backup first baseman. That's a tough play for him to make. Like you're just going uphill with everything on that play. And you, like I said, you just at least like to have the presence of mind to come off and make the catch and make the play, and then go from there and just kind of live to see another day. But that's what happens when you don't really have a backup first baseman, and like that's kind of where they're at right now too. So
Yeah, no, that is a good segue because I wanted to my prompt is kind of the Connor Wong injury. In totality, I don't think losing Connor Wong is a huge issue, but I do think that you know, the irony is they were almost inviting or welcoming an injury at almost any position on the field this season with the way the roster was set up, except for catcher. And it just so happens that catcher is where they've gotten that injury. But I also think that Wong, and you mentioned Romy Gonzalez, Casas, Campbell, even before he got hurt, Wong was part of the problem is probably too strong a word, but just an infield that is not doing themselves a lot of favors defensively. Like you mentioned, the defensive interferences. I know you mentioned the Campbell play last night. Another one that I think would have been great for a first baseman to have made was Bregman made a tough play going to his right to snag a ground ball down the line. He had to make a tough throw, so he kind of short hopped it to first. It wasn't an awful throw. Like he bounced it, but it wasn't like a really off. And Gonzalez just couldn't scoop it. Yeah, I mean, they're in a spot where it's like you're not hitting the cover off the ball, you're not striking people out left and right. You got to make those plays, and you also got to not be picked off the bases. I mean, it's been a bloodbath on the bases for those guys on like the stupid plays, like catchers throwing behind the runner at first base and getting picked off. Stuff that like is this Little League World Series over here?
which like I actually think that's the kind of stuff that'll drive you nuts too, because I think they on the whole run the bases pretty well. Not to get too locked down into base running discussions, but like the eye test and the numbers back this up. And I'm not gonna bore people with the finer arts of like base running metrics because I don't totally understand them. But like Rafaela and Campbell specifically have been like two of the best base runners in the league at like taking extra bases. But like, yeah, that stuff doesn't matter if you can't handle like the base level stuff. So, um, that's and again those are also the things that stand out more when guys are hurt or you're not getting performances that you need from certain players or both. And I think that's kind of where they're at with a lot of stuff right now.
It's also a timing issue on those base running things because there was the Story trying to stretch a single into a double. He gets thrown out. Would have been an RBI because Willie Abreu had a single either the next
Right.
at bat or two later. The same thing for when Hamilton got picked off at second base. They would have had an RBI, which I'm not blaming him for that. He was caught not paying attention, but
Yeah,
who's
probably
paying
pay
attention at
attention.
all times? Ah, So there are those two things, and you can easily look at them and say those are two RBIs that they missed. But they also have runners in scoring position, and they're just not hitting with runners.
Yeah.
Other than the 22 hit, 18 run game, they have not hit with runners in scoring position. Connor Wong, 10 of his first 17 at bats, and he had one RBI. Like they're
I
not
will
taking
say,
advantage of the situations.
to do the Connor Wong thing, like they're gonna. I love Navarez, by the way. Like I think he is sick.
He's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's just. I mean, that's defensively, he's awesome. Like he's great arm. Like he's actually been pretty good offensively. But Wong, I was looking at this again, number nerd, but like I think Wong coming into the night he got hurt had the biggest difference in the entire like in all of baseball, at least among qualified hitters, of expected stuff versus actual, like specifically batting average and maybe OBA. Like it was one of the baseball savant stats. Like he had been basically like the unluckiest guy in all of baseball, and that was gonna come around. And I actually do like conceptually understand get what they were going for with their catching position. Like you have the athletic guy who can hit, and then you've got the guy who kind of comes in and spells them every 4 or 5 days and is good defensively and shores up there. I also would one thing to kind of to notice and mention with this is um, like pitching staff handling that. I know Crochet's in a they've got a lot of new guys, so maybe it's not a huge deal, but like Crochet with Navarez as opposed to Crochet with Wong, kind of shaking off some stuff last night. That's something to kind of keep in mind. And like also you're like bringing up catchers from wherever, and now you're trying to assimilate them with a pitching staff that is young and inexperienced or has not been in the organization very long. There's a lot of unstable compounds being mixed about here that could lead to some explosions down the road.
Jason Varitek has the worst job in baseball right now,
Yeah,
trying to get everybody on the same page.